so complicated to exist in society right now. It's crazy. But also, I mean, we're struggling to really understand our needs for each other. Which was the real fear, honestly, that a lot of us had when we started to see this happening on the planet, was that women would come to a point where they didn't need men anymore. When it's not true. I mean, women do need men, but the question is what for? If you create a society where a woman can do everything for herself, like, where's the place for a man, you know? And what you notice in these relationships that were successful, there's a lot that were terrifying, but in these relationships that were successful before between men and women, what you notice is there is a very concrete idea about what needs I meet and what needs you meet. Because we're different elements, right? And that's actually quite healthy. So we're in a little bit of crisis moving into our modern lifestyles of knowing where that is. What is the contract? Because with any relationship, there is a contract. There's an energy exchange. And the question for us is, where is it with men and women right now? And we're getting more and more confused the more we walk down the road of like...
Yeah.
You know? But the thing is, our biology has not caught up with this. It's not like when we moved into, and this is the case for humans all the time, by the way, it was not like when we moved into a modern society, we were like, oh, inconveniently, my biology kept up. No, it didn't. It didn't. We're still attracted to the same things we were attracted to in the Stone Age with men.
Right.
We just don't want to get abused, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, through this sort of movement, we castrated the very thing that we love in men. And now men are like, I don't know what you want me to do or not do. Do you want me to open the door or not? Is this now an insult or no? You know? And then we're like, why didn't you do that? That's protection. Well, don't insult me. I can do it myself. You know, it's literally it's so confused right now. I gotta almost like say to the people watching this, if you feel like you are just like in a maze, like in the weeds, I'd hope so. That's paying attention.
Right.
Well, I think that's why it's topical to us and why I think discussing it...
Because it is very confusing because you're seeing this whole movement, everything, and you're just like, I can't even put words to it, to be honest. It's very confusing.
It's confusing and it's gaslighting and people say this, but really this is the truth.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's also frightening because people are so triggered by even just hearing a conversation such as this, and I'm sure they will be, that... obviously, having this type of conversation has consequences, which is crazy in a society. To talk has a consequence. Like,
especially this country.
Well, yeah, like when a conversation can be something that is actually dangerous to people. So what do you say to people? Like, there are people watching this. They're probably feeling emotions. They're probably reflecting. They're probably processing. What is the best thing you can say to promote someone being able to digest this from a point of view, not saying you have to agree with what we're saying, but to consider that the position that they're having that emotional reaction towards protecting might not be the right strategy?
Stop making it about the conversation that we're having, because it's not the concepts themselves that are upsetting people. It's vulnerabilities that they're worried are going to be trampled on or not considered by us having this conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for them to recognize it isn't the conversation.
I mean, yeah, most people aren't really upset about what you're talking about. It's a separate, it's like, oh no, that brings up this whole other thing for me.
Yeah.
So like, it's really
It's
about
trauma.
this. So like, why don't we have a conversation about that? I'm afraid that, I mean, fill in the blank. Let's think, what might somebody be having a hard time with? Like for somebody who's a feminist, for example, who's in the older generation who might be watching this, being like, no, you don't understand. Like it was so bad back then that you couldn't even get a job. As a woman, you can't get paid, that's not the conversation we're having. I wouldn't even disagree with that. So if that person were sitting in the room, the vulnerability is about, I need you to see my pain. I need you to see that it was really good that we did this, because if we didn't do this, girls like you couldn't say what you're saying right now. I know.
Yeah.
I know, but like the conversation that we're having isn't even about that.
No. Yeah.
It's literally just about any time you get a subculture that comes up that tries to change the dominant culture, that becomes the new toxicity. And it would be wonderful if humanity could get out of that cycle, and yet it just keeps repeating. So, and it did.
Yeah, the cycle seems to be driving its way into whole new levels at this point.
What do you think the future of this? Like, I mean, you mentioned before that you're able to astral travel and remove yourself from
marriage doesn't exist in the future.
No marriage.
No marriage.
Is it just like a partnership that you agreed to and without the the legalization of it, or
what it looks like is groups. So it's almost like humans are going back to being more primate, and it looks like a group living type of a situation that people are headed towards, and that pair bonding is not as attached to the human ego. And because it's not as attached to the human ego, it's what it looks like in terms of what we would call a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship. It's very much more like a bonding with who makes sense for the moment.
So it's more open relationships.
Not necessarily. I mean, I could say yes. For some, it will look like that, but people are still pair bonding in the future. But that pair bonding doesn't mean the same thing today. And it's like you're sleeping with this person or being with this person on a romantic level because right now that's the compulsion almost. But it's almost like when two beings don't want to engage in that anymore, which it looks like it's around 3 to 4 years as average, that they're like, okay, I think we're moving to a different whatever. It doesn't have the same meaning is what it looks like. I mean, when I've been watching some of this in the future, that's essentially what I can say about it. Because when there's that movement, even though you see some frustration, some fussiness, like you would in an average animal, when they're experiencing the loss of something that was precious, it doesn't mean something about you. So what that tells me is that in our society right now, it's very much an idea that was placed in our minds that if somebody chooses you as a partner, it means something about you as a person and your ego and your worth. And that has gone away. So a lot of the fixation on the one being a person who's like, you are my sun, my moon, and my star, and then all of a sudden I don't like you, it means something about you, you as a person. It's not there. The same way that like let's say, and jealousy factors aren't there as much too. So let's say that right now another man comes up and is like all touchy-feely with you, right? That poses a huge threat to the relationship nowadays. But we're weird about other things. Like if a guy like just went and like shook your hand, it wouldn't mean the same thing. So what it looks like in the future is that there's a very different meaning that our society assigns to pair bonding in general.
What about parenthood?